You are now tuned in to Discover Your Potential with TV radio talk show hosts Dan Gilman and Anna DeVere. So listen, participate, and be inspired. Know that you can discover your potential.
Today, we are thrilled to welcome a guest whose story of resilience and transformation is truly inspiring. Joining us is Darryll Stinson, a former Division I athlete, TEDx speaker, and author who has dedicated his life to helping others overcome adversity and discover their true potential. Darryll's journey from battling depression and a career-ending injury to becoming a motivational speaker and mental health advocate is nothing short of miraculous. Join us now as we explore Darryll's path to recovery, his mission to inspire others, and his insights on achieving success and fulfillment against all odds.
Welcome to Discover Your Potential, Darryll. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Me too.
I'm pumped.
We're pretty chill for that, but I know I've heard you speak, and it's an honor to have you here, man. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I just wanted to learn more, and I wanted the audience to learn more about you. I know we were just on a segment with Zen, but just tell us a little bit about you, your journey. I know you were in sports and unfortunately had an injury. And how did that shift your whole way of being, your mindset? Just love to hear more about you and your story.
Well, I'll take you back to the beginning. We got a little more time. It's, essentially I was a really smart kid growing up. My mother put me in accelerated learning classes because I was like very smart, very brilliant, really good in class. And so I was in these accelerated learning classes in Jackson, Michigan, where I'm from. And that made me one of two Black students in an all-white class. And it worked in my favor. People cheated off my test. They laughed at my jokes. I was one of the smartest kids in the class. But I learned very quickly that there was this rumor going on, or more like this joke going on in school, that I was the Black kid who talked and acted white, air quotes. And it created this insecurity that who I was authentically wasn't enough to be liked or loved by other people. And so I essentially, to make a long story short, changed everything about myself to fit in with other people. I changed the way that I talked, the music I listened to. I even changed the way that I laughed. I started skipping school, selling drugs, having sex outside of marriage. I mean, we're talking 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And I'm doing all of this stuff. And I went from being this all-A student who was happy that he had perfect attendance 2 years in a row to being suspended 10 times in the 7th grade and almost getting expelled from public school system. And it was because I so desperately wanted to fit in with that African-American community in my hometown. And I did. They embraced me. I got welcomed. I became popular in that circle. And I did so at a cost to, what would eventually be my mental health. I had projected this false version of myself for so long that I lost sight of who I really was. On top of that, you add into the fact that once I started to become really good at sports, that people cared less about what I talked about or who I hung out with, and all they cared about was sports. So whereas this street persona was an identity that I hid behind, there was also this jock and this athlete identity that now I'm hiding behind. That, hey, if we talk about sports and we talk about my athleticism and the people that I'm playing against and the rankings that I'm getting nationally, then we don't have to get to the fact that I talk like a white boy, or that I'm not tough enough, or that I don't listen to this music, or, there was a whole thing I had around the gap in my teeth and the color of my skin, because I was one of the darker kids in my class in my school. And so I had all these insecurities, and sports was a way to mask it, and this identity of a persona, drug dealer guy, was a way to mask it. And I basically hid my authentic self behind those two identities all the way through college. So, when I ended up getting injured and having to go through, that dark night of the soul of facing depression, facing the fact that this thing that was going to make me successful, help me to get out of the hood that I grew up in, And this thing that I was gaining all this love and acceptance and validation from got taken away from me because of a severe back injury that I had. It was devastating. Like I try to tell people the weight of it, because people are like, what are you talking about? Like, you played athlete, you were a top 100 athlete, y'all won a MAC championship, you were ranked 23rd in the nation, like you played with Antonio Brown, who's arguably one of the best receivers of all time, you played with Eric Fisher, who's a #1 draft pick, you played with, all these amazing people. What do you have to complain about? What do you have to be sad about? Why are you so depressed? Why are you going to the place where you're thinking of taking your life? Sports wasn't what I did. It was who I was. They weren't taking away my job. They were taking away my source of love. And because I didn't think people loved me for me, I had built a life and a way of being where people just loved me for my gift and my persona and my performance. It created this deep-seated insecurity within me and this confusion that I don't even know who I am, because I pretended to be someone I'm not for so long. Let me pause there.
I'm feeling it too. Yeah, I'm feeling it too. I'm sorry. I'm like, where's the tissue box? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Great.
I'll
No.
pause. I'm into it.
No.
It's an important thing, though,
Yeah. Whenever you're ready. Here, I'm going to jump in and save you for a second.
Come save me.
Okay, so listen, I'm not even taking a pause to wipe my eyes, because I feel you. I had a couple of very unfortunate incidents in high school. And I'm not going to go into my story. I tell it often, but it was crushing, and it was like cancer on the inside, personality wise. But I was in theater, so I knew how to play a role.
Yeah.
So I really thank you for being so transparent. I mean, I've never played professional sports. I've been on team sports, love it. I understand what motivates you, but we're going to get into your excellent career and mindset and what really became your turning point and how you pulled yourself back from that. I just want to thank you, because I think many people can identify with, where's the love coming from? And for me, being an actor, I just masked over all that hurt. Nobody had to know what was going on. Even my parents didn't know. And I'm talking about age 15.
Yeah.
And hiding behind happiness and something I get praised for. And it's such a temptation to live out other people's expectations. So yeah, I'm really feeling you on that. And thank you for getting so real so fast. But I want to get to the point where I'll take us back to your narrative, where you're in that dark place and you experience a kind of a turning point. Can you tell us a little bit about that moment when you really decided?
I got kicked off the sports team because I was taking so many painkillers that they were thinning my blood. And every time I made contact on the field, my nose would bleed. So I was lying to the coaches, telling them that it was allergies, and they kind of finally caught on. On top of that, my body was failing. I was developing a permanent hunch in my back. So they kicked me off the team. I went through this depression. At the same time, the person who I did open up and confide in, my girlfriend, who I was dating for 4.5 years at the time, left me and got engaged to another man. And so the girl left, the thing that I was placing my identity in left. On top of that, I started to feel, I don't know, convicted, if that's the right word, or guilty for the fact that I was selling drugs and, treating women the way that I was treating them. So there was all this self-hatred going on. And all of that compounding internally created this implosion that, for me, led to multiple suicide attempts. Thank God, at my last one, my mother, helped talk me out of it and escorted me to the psychiatric unit. And it was there that I found my faith, which gave me purpose, which helped me to believe that my life had meaning outside of sports. And then I also did my first journal entry, saw my first counselor, did my first mindfulness exercise, and I started to learn that I could access the same feelings of aliveness, of abundance, of achievement, of thrill through these self-care practices, even though I wasn't doing the external thing of sports. And so I tell people I learned that I could build my life from the inside out and not just the outside in. And it started a powerful, rapid success train in my life.
Are you still journaling? I'm just curious. Are you still writing every day?
Oh, totally. And in fact, it's part of what I teach and consult speakers and leaders to do, to have an emotional practice of journaling, because when you teach in accordance to the way that you live your life, a lot of the psychological wrestles, a lot of the relational challenges, a lot of the dynamics that you're moving through in your own life, journaling about them helps you to actually document your uniqueness in the way that you move through those things. And that becomes the gems, the treasure, the nuggets, the wisdom that you pass on to other people.
Okay, ding, 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 because I did the same thing from age 16 until now, and in my 50s. And I am amazed. I remember a journal entry where I literally drew a picture of myself. There's one little tear because I'm also an artist, and one of my hands is like a werewolf. So it's like I got this monster that nobody sees. You would never
Yeah.
know that's my identity. But I look back on my 16-year-old self and I was like, that's deep. And I go,
Yeah.
look at the journey. I'm amazed at your body of work, man. I want to talk about you, but so far you're like hitting every point. I'm like, that's relatable. That's relatable. That's relatable.
Mm.
Dan, jump in here. I will just start crying again. Oh, we can't hear you. You're muted. Yeah.
I'm muted, of course. So sorry about that.
That's okay.
So that's great. I'll go into that. Second chance athletes. I don't mean to jump into that, but that I can see that connective tissue between your, being an athlete to transform other people that have or who want a second chance. And that's actually an extension of what you're doing to be that athlete as well. But I would love to learn more about that. I'd love to learn, how people can also support that. Is that still active today, correct? Second Chance
Yeah,
Athlete?
it's just active in different ways, right? And so they're the sponsoring organization for our TEDx event. The connections that we make are still going on. We're still got curriculum out there that people are using and going through. We have a course curriculum that people can have access to. Athletes, former forgotten is the terminology that we use. And so, yeah, there's lots still going on, just not in the ways that it was. My focus now and the way that I'm helping athletes is less around like the core curriculum that I outlined in my book, Who Am I After Sports? And it's more of who out of these athletes feels a calling to speak, has a message to share. And a lot of athletes, go into speaking because of their, celebrity status, but their skill of speaking is not as good as their skill as an athlete. They were amazing as athletes and they're like beginners at speaking. So part of my challenge to elite athletes is like, hey, don't settle for a photo op as a celebrity with your gold medal or with your Super Bowl ring. Like actually become the best in the world at the craft, actually get good at telling stories and sharing content. Because if you add that to celebrity status, oh my God, look at the impact that you can make. And so a lot of the work that I do now in terms of athletes in transition is around helping them to share their voice, to advance their movement with their message.
This episode of Discover Your Potential is sponsored by BetterHelp. I want to take time to express my gratitude. I've been able to give BetterHelp a try, and it's been about 30 years since I've tried traditional therapy, and wow, things have really changed. I found it really simple to get matched with a counselor, and I'm amazed at how spot on that match was. The process is really simple. I just went in for some tune-up on motivation, and if I'm honest, I really wanted to get at the heart of what's eating me. And I am so pleased to say that the counselor has given me insights in just a short while, and that I am on my way to living a better life. If you truly want to discover your potential, I encourage you to give it a try. Visit betterhelp.com/DYP today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DYP.
That's fabulous.
There's one thing that I did feel prompted to share when you actually asked that question, because one of the through lines that I don't get to talk about often is, they say in business, we're always helping the former version of ourselves. And so in a lot of ways, Second Chance Athletes was built for the former version of myself. So when I graduated, so ended, survived the suicide attempt, come out of the psychiatric unit, ready to like go build a career. Okay. And I always tell people I had the right degree, but I just didn't have the experience because I was planning on going to the NFL. And so I was just, goofing off in class. I knew how to do multiple choice, and I knew how to cheat. And so I got through and I got, 3.3 GPA or whatever. And so I was doing decently well, but I did not know how my industry was PR. So I did not know how to write a press release. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to like do anything. Like I had no experience. I just was in class and showing up. I didn't actually learn anything really. And so I had a semester to graduate. I had to take 20 plus credits, plus work a job, plus do an internship. And so I did that. And one of the things that I always felt connected to is I felt called to, connected to speaking. People often ask me about it. I got all types of signs in my life that that's what I was supposed to be doing. But I was so insecure. I hated talking in front of people. I had all the insecurities that I talked about, right? Gap in my teeth, too dark color skin. I was poor growing up, couldn't afford good clothes. So I didn't have a poor sense of fashion, let alone talking too white or too black in whatever room I was in. And so all that insecurity was there. So although I had took a public speaking class as an undergrad, once I graduated and got this job working for the university, I had the opportunity to go back and retake an undergraduate public speaking course, which was transformative for my career because the professor that I got just so happened to be one of the most amazing public speaking professors you'll ever meet. He was so free. He ended up bringing me on as his teacher's assistant, and he was having me do all of this stuff that was making me so uncomfortable, and it was breaking me out of that insecurity. And here he was, natural, and I still got videos. If you want to show clips, you should show that.
I'd love to.
That's amazing.
Trying to like engage the virtual audience with sunglasses and an outfit, and you can just see and listen to me. You can see how ashamed I was, how afraid I was, et cetera, et cetera. So that was so helpful to me. Listen, I felt like I got a second chance to succeed in life without the demands of sports. And therein lies the organization that I built.
So you fell in love with speaking.
That's
Over
amazing.
time.
I've heard you talk about this, though. You like to run toward, you crave now that new person experience. Like you look for the uncomfortable, right? I've heard you talk about that.
Well, yes. And most high achievers do, but we also know how to hide things that really make us scared, that really make us vulnerable. So to a degree, if you measure me against the average person, I run at fear. But there's still areas in my life where I compromise, where I cower. In fact, the publishing of my book was one of those areas. So when I published my book, I don't know if you saw the original cover, but it was published with, for those who can see on the screen, it's a white book and it's got soccer cleats hanging down. I researched all the top selling books. Okay, what made them bestsellers? They had to have simple text and not a lot of stuff going on the cover. And then the world's largest sport was soccer. So I figured I'd put soccer cleats on the front because there's more soccer athletes in the world than there are any other sport. Consciously, that's what I did. But subconsciously, I was hiding this cover the whole time. This cover existed when this book was published. But I didn't pick this because several reasons. The main reason is because I found an area to hide that I was afraid of. Because this was a bestseller and impacted colleges and athletes and Olympians and all executives and people all over the world, nobody ever called me out on my lack of authenticity. Nobody ever said, Darryll, is that your fullest expression? Is that your most authentic expression? Nobody said that because I was hiding my fear of failure and being seen behind success. But after 3 years of growth and running at fear and doing all this, I got to the point where I got enough courage to reveal who I really am and to be okay with being seen and judged. One of my biggest insecurities is that people wouldn't want a black kid sitting on their coffee table. So no one's going to buy this book with a black face on it.
Oh, wow. So when did you just
Just
switch
did
up your
just
coverage?
a month ago. Just
Oh
came out
wow.
with this boy.
Wow.
With
Thanks
a
again for
vengeance.
being right,
With-
for being transparent, because we look at you and we think that guy's got it all together. That guy's got appeared in, multiple places, TED Talks, all the
Yep.
things I have on my bucket list, and public
Mhm.
speaking's on my bucket list. But it's amazing for you to tell this audience that, the running at fear never stops.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you something, because I know this is key to what you teach.
I'm scared.
Okay. No. I'm kind. I'm your friend here.
I
'Cause
want
you
to ask
made
you something that's gonna challenge you.
no. Thanks for thinking I'm scary. That pumps me up a little bit. I know this is a key word I've heard you say, and I so relate to this as a songwriter, that you're trying to teach people the power of resonance. So
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit, because it feels to me like all the masks we wear, if we understand that we are all here to create resonance. I'm doing it as a songwriter. I'm looking for that sweet spot. What connects you and me? And I know what it means to me, but tell me, look at you vibing totally different on that word. So tell me, it's not scary at all,
Well,
is it?
resonance is a big word because it's so powerful. Resonance is the difference between you speaking in front of 100 people and reaching 100, and you speaking in front of 100 people and reaching 1,000,000. Resonance equals reach, which equals revenue. I'll give you another example. Resonance is that thing that when you watch commercials, a commercial that doesn't resonate with you, you're like, okay, cool, that was funny, ha ha ha. A commercial that resonates for you, you're like, where's my phone? Let me screenshot it. How do I rewind it? Did you DVR? Did you play it?
Yes.
It resonates with you. From a speaking standpoint, it's that moment where it's like, okay, the speaker's up there, they're telling their story, they're doing their thing, and then all of a sudden they say something at the right pace, at the right time, with the right tonality, and it resonates with you. It causes you to pay attention and to start to be open to make changes about your behavior or your beliefs. It is a powerful skill to cultivate the ability to have greater levels of resonance. And it was one of the things that was my deepest pain, because I grew up in a family that didn't care how I felt. Loved me, supported me. But because I was a male and a perceived leader, did not care how I felt, in a lot of ways was taught that emotions were weakness. So when I would cry, they would spank me and they would tell me, Darryll, you're being a crybaby. You're being too emotional. And if I would try to speak up, they would raise their hand and they would threaten me. And they say, you better stop crying. I'll give you something to cry about. And it forced me to hold all that emotion in. And so I grew up never being heard by people I love. So when I got on stage and I felt like I'm overcoming this insecurity, this gap in my teeth, this hatred of my skin, I'm overcoming all of this to serve, to help the old version of myself, to be the help that I wish that I had. If I'm going to stand in front of a room full of an audience, it used to bother me when people say, if you just reach one person, you've done your job. There ain't no way that I overcame fear and insecurity and depression and self-hatred in order to speak in front of 1,000 people and just impact one. I get the heart of it, but that is not the mission. The mission is to impact as many people as possible. The mission is to say something that resonates so powerfully that people want to pass on that message to their friends, to their loved ones. The mission is to say something with so much resonance that it causes them to stop the suicidal ideation, to drop the drugs, to stop the depression, to publish the book, to launch the business, to write the song. And that required me to break a pattern that I developed since a childhood of stifling my emotion, because emotions are the gateway to resonance.
Mm.
Hmm.
Is that something that you find that's the nugget? And is that something that you find is common then for you're hitting male athletes, right? Let's say as a demographic, when you're teaching, is that common in their journey as well? That emotion is not. You're
Hey,
smiling, so
well, I'm smiling because I would love to have all male athletes, but the nature of what I talk about, men are definitely afraid of emotions. 80% of my clients are women.
Oh, interesting.
And
Whoa.
I believe that because women are less afraid of emotions, and because I talk about the importance of resonance and emotional sharing, and vulnerable sharing, I think
Mhm.
males are like, oh,
I'm
nah, bro.
out. And they
Yeah.
don't understand the gift of creating that resonance on stage. And
Well, that's
so I can
breakthrough.
see that. It's a breakthrough. And not a
Yeah.
lot of people sign up for it. But I'm just seeing a vast vision of why you're so important and what you're doing, and love to be a part of what you're doing, because it seems to me that in today's world, a lot of men suffer for having to be that backbone, and then,
Mhm.
and having to be a certain individual that can't be fearful. It has to be strong. That has
Yeah.
to be the leader. And you you got a lot of answers. And I'm just thinking, wow, we got to talk off camera about how we can support that, because I think that's
Yeah.
truly kind of an epidemic in today's world, and why I think that suicide rates are up, in
Man.
particular men and particular teens. But this is a subject that I
Yeah.
work passionately on, in nonprofit space, and just
Awesome.
love to see all your work and what you keep, like what excites you about the
Yeah.
future, and I've heard you talk about your legacy. Go ahead and open up that question, Dan. Or, me.
Well,
Yeah.
before I talk about legacy, I just wanted to bring up one thing. So I had the good fortune, and I can do this off topic, off record. What is your time frame, by the way?
When do you have to
We're good.
bounce? Okay.
We're
Okay,
good.
because I know you said you have a hard stop,
Yeah,
but
yeah. We can stop 5 minutes before the top of the hour. That'd be great.
okay,
Okay.
perfect. We'll
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes, right? Something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah. 5,
Okay,
7
well,
minutes. Yeah.
okay, yeah, I'll just make it quick. But I had the good fortune to work with Les Brown.
Mhm.
But it was interesting because we had over 160. He had over 160 students in one class at one
Yeah.
point in time, and but he in a lot there were a lot of males in there too. But he all of a sudden broke down,
Mhm.
and I noticed that a lot of people had just not issues, but just it was challenging for them.
Yeah.
But he's very emotional.
Yeah.
He's quite extraordinary. But I just remember seeing when he was in that in that mode, and you could
Yeah.
see that shift
Yeah.
that some of the other males in the group actually felt him. But there's a lot of people, like you mentioned, that are just, not void, but just emotionally shut down. But anyway, I brought that
Yeah.
up because it was interesting that you said that, because I think that
Yeah.
part of work, breaking people into feeling emotion, especially speakers,
Yeah.
for men especially, is extraordinary, because I'm very much an
Yeah.
empath. So I
Yeah.
unfortunately I get emotional. But anyway,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he's even
I'm the same
apologizing for
way.
it.
I'm
I
the
got
same way.
it.
well, I shouldn't say it, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
in even in today's society, it's kind of frowned upon for men
Oh, yeah.
to be
It makes
emotional.
people uncomfortable because people
Yeah,
have
because
bought
they're
one
not
of the
accustomed
world's
to it.
biggest lies. People bought one of the world's biggest lies, which is that they're not an emotional person. And every time someone says that, I said, "Hey, you learned not to be emotional, but
Yeah.
you weren't born that way. The first thing you did when you came out the womb was cry."
Yeah, that's true.
And so
Ah.
people were like, "I'm not a crier." I'm like, "Okay, I saw you when you're born." You know what I mean? Like, and it's just that I learned not to be emotional to keep me safe, and because of my family dynamics and all that type of thing. The other thing that you guys brought up that I wanted to speak to with the Les Brown situation, and even like some of Anna's share around like the need for this in the world. For me, when I was developing my third TEDx talk, I didn't end up delivering it because ultimately I want to see if I can do it on TED, TED, without the X. But the concept was like I didn't have a better title. It was like the how of vulnerability. For me, one of the things that I feel like I can offer really powerfully to the world is the how. I think there's a ton of people that know the importance of vulnerability and they are waving the flag for people to be more vulnerable. I think people lack the how, like how. The other thing around it is like the paradigm around what it means to be vulnerable or emotional, right? Like a lot of times when people say, "Oh, I know I should be more emotional. I know I should, share more emotion. I know I need more resonance for stage, that type of thing." The main thing that they're thinking about is like, "Oh, I have to cry or I have to talk about my trauma." But there is a spectrum of emotion, I say, that goes from pain to power or from trauma to truth. Okay. It's just as vulnerable to talk about your trauma as it is to stand in your truth. Give you an example. Me talking about overcoming suicidal ideation is obviously vulnerable to the paradigm of the world. But you know what is also vulnerable? Publishing a book cover, standing in my truth. You know what's also vulnerable is being in a room full of gossipers and choosing not to gossip. That's vulnerable. So it's not only when I'm being emotional and crying about my trauma, it's also when I'm standing powerfully in what I believe. It's vulnerable. Okay, because I'm open to the judgments and the attack. That's the definition of vulnerability, is to be open.
Yeah.
And so the
I can't agree
how
with you.
is what people are lacking. How do I be? And then okay, I'm open. I'm open to share my story, but I don't want to trauma dump on people. I don't want to turn into an emotional wreck on stage and have it be all about me and people feel sorry for me after the speech.
Yeah.
And so part of what I help people to do is like, how do you go into the right places of the story and the right pieces, and then how do you bring them out and add the lessons, and so you don't just talk about the valley, but you bring them to the mountaintop. Like, how do we do that? Okay, and it's very, very, very valuable.
Yeah.
Okay,
I know.
but the paradigm around it is super helpful for people. So just automatically know, like, hey, you don't have to crack vulnerability through crying about trauma. You can start with standing in truth.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm trying to finish my book. So you've spoken to all my pain points today. So what I want to know, seriously, like I get all that, standing in a room and having others judge you for your greatness.
Yeah.
Because then you get imposter syndrome. Dan and I talk about imposter syndrome all the time. So I want to know, how can I find you at one of these pop-ups? Where do you do your events? How do people get connected to you? And what do you offer?
Yeah, so majority I'm out in Nashville. We host transformational events for speakers, give them an opportunity to work through the resistance in their message, to figure out how to develop greater levels of resonance with their story, and to learn world-class strategy on how to get their message in front of the people who need to hear it the most, both in person and online. So we host those events. There's no door price. You can follow us on social, and we're always posting and marketing about it. You can also go to my website, that type of thing. Usually they're in Nashville, and then we host them in Atlanta and California, and then sometimes select places where people gather a crowd.
Beautiful Laguna Beach. Don't forget to sell that part.
Laguna Beach, yeah. I'll be going out there
I'm
there. You have to come down to Boston at some point.
Okay. Well, we'll get you everywhere. We'll
I
stay
love
connected.
Boston, by the way, Dan.
you?
Love Boston. Yeah. Love it.
How exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we want to wrap up with, Dan? I mean, I know we're going to let you go in like 2 seconds.
We got to let him go, but hopefully we can have you on again. We really, truly loved having you.
This was amazing.
We
Thank
could
you.
speak for hours with you.
I love you guys. I love what you stand for in the world. You know, I do tons of these interviews all the time. Y'all have been really hospitable, been really professional, and the way you're having conversations is extremely helpful for listeners. So thank you for just being great leaders and people that are really fun to listen to.
Oh, you're fun to listen to. I'm going to be stalking you, man. I got so much more to say. Let's get it. I'm like so sad we got to go. Okay.
Well, and by the way, I write songs.
I didn't tell you my credentials. I used to sing with Gladys Knight in a gospel choir that toured for 6 years. Yeah. And the other thing, we got to go. The other thing, my cousin is Tamika Wright, and Tamika produced Straight Outta Compton, the movie. She was married to Eric Wright. She talked all the time about this whole issue of not being black enough, not being white enough. So I didn't even really put together all of it till I heard you, which is why I broke down. It's like, it's deeper than people understand, and nobody can really understand it until they step into your world. And so thank you for being vulnerable on every point. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Really.
Yep. We'll talk again.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Discover Your Potential. We hope you found today's conversation inspiring. Be sure to subscribe and follow us for more empowering stories and expert advice. And remember, the power to discover your potential lies within you.
Do something nice for yourself, but do something nice for someone else.
This episode of Discover Your Potential is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know, I feel really lucky to interview some of the top coaches and motivational speakers from around the world. But the truth is, I don't always feel motivated to jump out of bed and chase my best life. And if you're like me, the last thing you need to be doing is getting on social media to compare your life to somebody else. They say comparison is the thief of joy, and we all know that's true. But I'm here to tell you that there is a better way. And if you've ever thought about therapy, I encourage you to check out BetterHelp. Some of the best therapists are there. They serve many, many people. I think the best thing is that it's around your schedule. And I'm telling you from personal experience, just filling out the questionnaire is going to make you feel supported. So head on over there, stop comparing, and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/DYP today for a 10% discount off your first visit for that month. And that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DYP.